Coming to the Niagara Regional Police Services Board monthly meeting. Before I begin this meeting and getting into the agenda, I would just like to remind everyone that in attendance that our board meetings are live streamed, and the video recording of today's meeting will be posted on the board's YouTube site. As it's our tradition in the board, I would like to pay tribute to our Indigenous landholders. And to begin this meeting, I would like to acknowledge the land as traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today is a gathering place, is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and this acknowledgement reminds us of the great standard of living that we enjoy in Niagara is directly related to the resources and friendships of the Indigenous people who make up our community. So as we get into the agenda, I will ask if there's any declaration of conflict or pecuniary interest from any board members. Seeing none, I will start with my remarks. Minutes. Oh, sorry. So under the minutes, sorry, I'm out of sequence. Previous board meeting on December 31st, a mover and seconder of that, please. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member Stewart. All in favor of the minutes from the previous meeting? Thank you. That matter is dealt with. Report from the board chair. I will make some remarks. We had an election, as you know, last Wednesday. For myself as chair and William Steele as vice chair. And I would like to thank my fellow board members for my election as chair to the Niagara Regional Police Service Board. It is my honor and privilege to continue and serve on the board as the capacity as chair for the coming year. And I thank everyone for your support. I also want to thank member Bob Gale, who served for 4 years, and his support and tireless efforts on the board was welcomed. The board has made significant progress, and it needs to move forward on so many initiatives. First, I need to emphasize the importance of the board working as a team. We have 2 new members on our board, and their insight and experiences will add to our success and that of this police service. I would like to highlight some of the many challenges the board and the service face in 2019. Yes, some of this will seem like a repeat from last year. In the area of building and facilities, it is imperative that #1 district in St. Catharines move forward with construction as quickly as possible. The tender for construction closed at the end of September 2018, and with some fine-tuning of budget some budget needs still need to be completed. With support of Regional Council, the board looks forward to seeing this new building take shape with construction sometime in the spring of this year. Yes, we will get this built. I want to highlight some of the services enhanced community engagement activities. The Chief continues to be out front and center in our community. He continues with his Coffee with a Cop program, which is being held across many locations in the Niagara region. This initiative was started to provide local residents with an opportunity to connect and share concerns with Niagara Regional Police Service command staff. The service also began community engagement sessions to provide members of the public an opportunity to address local community concerns and discuss crime prevention tips, community safety issues, local crime trends, and policing services that are available in their community. These initiatives are part of an overall direction that the board and service is taking to engage with our citizens and visitors to our region. Policing requires community input, and I can't stress that enough, and which is welcome. We continue to face annual budget pressures, but again, with the cooperative approach by the board, the chief and executive command team, we will continue to mitigate annual budget pressures by identifying efficiencies, opportunities for cost savings, and of course, this is an ongoing process. This year's budget has funding for a number of critical areas, one being the well-being of our members, both civilian and uniform, with the inclusion of a staff psychologist to our makeup of the service. And we would not be the only police service to have such an individual. In the area of technology, as we continue as a police service, we rely more on technology to solve and fight criminal activity in our region. The fully staffed Real-Time Operations Center, or RTOC, is a step in the right direction. We will continue to leverage on our use of business intelligence to drive police operations as we move forward with an intelligence-led policing here in the Niagara region. A critical piece of work for the board is the development of a 2019 to 2021 strategic plan. This will include priorities identified by the Niagara Regional Police Service members and the community, as well as organizational priorities to find greater operational efficiencies and cost savings. Formulate strategies for business sustainability, improve communications, information management, community engagement, enhance service delivery to youth, vulnerable persons, victims, and people in crisis, and foster safer communities throughout Niagara. As my job as board chair, we will ensure that we continue to ask the right questions and that we have the right facts before us, that we may consider all options and viewpoints of the service, management, and individual board members, and that the board engage in discussions, debates necessary to tackle these challenges effectively. Both the board and I have the utmost confidence in you, Chief McCullough, Deputy Chief Forty, and Deputy Chief Flynn. I know Bill is away on vacation, and your entire senior management and command team that's here today. You have my commitment and that of the board that we will work together to meet all the challenges that lie ahead in 2019, and I thank you. I will now ask our Vice Chair, Bill Steele, if he has any comments to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just short. I would like to thank the members of the board for your support in my nomination election as Vice Chair of the Police Services Board. Our board will continue to budget efficiently in the best interest of the ratepayers in our communities. Working with the municipalities and community stakeholders and getting more officers in the field will improve our rapport with the average citizen. Respect between our officers and residents can only benefit with more boots on the ground. Chief McCullough, Deputy Chief Forty, and Deputy Chief Flynn, I look forward to working with you and your entire team to achieve these objectives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I will now turn to the Chief of Police. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm not finished. New business, or report from myself as the chair. I'd like to report on that the Niagara Regional Police Service Business Plan Working Session was held January the 15th and 18th. Member Stewart attended and is our representative on that committee. The Business Plan Working Group sessions as his role as chair. The working group recently completed the NRPS Community Satisfaction Survey on policing in Niagara. And from January 21st through February 28th, the service is conducting a 1,000 randomly drawn household telephone survey to assess citizens' perception of effectiveness, sense of safeness in the community, and the importance of community programs. And yes, we will not be asking for your MasterCard or Visa number, and we're not from the Visa Central Office, and we're not a part of a robocall, of which we get so many. Member Stewart, any comments?
Thank you, Chair. And just briefly, we had two basically full days as we're beginning to refine the goals for the service for the next 3 years, and as well looking at measurements for those goals, and so we can effectively measure what level of success we achieve. And that's a slow and painstaking process, but we're getting there, and we're hoping that by the end of March we'll have something for the board to look at and add their final input to. So we look forward to continuing to work on it.
Okay, thank you. A really, I think, exciting event took place last week, and that was the Chief's Charity Gala for Pro-Action Cops and Kids and Victim Services Niagara. Last Thursday on January 17th, Pro-Action Cops and Kids and Victim Services hosted the third annual Chief's Charity Gala at the Americana Resort here in Niagara Falls. The event provided an opportunity to celebrate and recognize the incredible work performed in the vital community services provided by Victim Services and the program of Pro-Action Cops and Kids here in Niagara. The board was honored to be part of that event and sends a special thank you to Theo Fury for sharing his story in support of the both charities. And for those that attended, that was quite the speech that, and personal background that he presented. And I give him a lot of courage for what and how he presented that last night. Vice Chair Steele, members Gibson, McKendrick, Stewart, and I, as well as Board Executive Director and Executive Assistant, attended the event on behalf of the Board. Joint Regional Police Facilities Committee. The Joint Regional Police Facilities Committee met on January 22nd. I do attend those. I'm happy to report that the District 1 project is moving forward and a successful contractor has been selected. Final approval from Regional Council is expected sometime in February, and further updates will be provided to the Board as this project advances. The Ontario Association of Police Services Board Zone 4 meeting. The Ontario Association of Police Services Board, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, will be holding their Zone 4 quarterly meeting on February 26 at 8 a.m. This meeting is being hosted by Hamilton Police Service Board and will be held at the Best Western on Stone Church Road in Hamilton. Board members are asked to confirm their attendance with board staff by February the 11th. I will outline that the next meeting of the board here is Thursday, which is a committee meeting day, Thursday the 14th of February at 8:30 in the morning, again in this room. And the next board meeting, full board meeting, is Thursday, February 28th, 8:30, again in the same room here at headquarters. At this point in time, I would very much ask if Maria Izzo would come forward, please. If you'd like to go to the podium, please. So on January 31st of this year, Maria Izzo will be retiring from the Niagara Regional Police Service after a lengthy career that began in 1987. Was that in Fort Erie?
No, that's the other Maria.
Ah, okay.
I started with training in HR.
Okay. Now I got to change my story for your retirement next week.
Okay.
In her role as the executive assistant to the chief of police, Maria has worked closely with the board staff, who can attest to her strong work ethic, dedication, duties, and willingness to always lend a helping hand. And I would say has probably been involved in most of the functions, such as Pro Action Cops and Kids and some of the other events that have been held over the number of years. And her diligence and attention to detail certainly show in every one of those events that I have attended. The service will hold a retirement celebration here in our community room on January 31st from 12 p.m. to 2, and all board members are welcome to join in this celebration as we wish Maria Izzo good health, happiness, much success in future endeavors. So I will now turn to you, put you on the hot seat. If you have some words, I would appreciate them. Thank you.
Chair Ganzel and Vice Chair Steele, thank you so much for inviting me here today and for taking the time to recognize me in such a special way. I was not expecting this, and you've really made me feel so appreciated and respected, and I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to just come down here and be with you. Thank you so much. When I leave next week, I will leave a very happy and grateful person for everything that the service has done for me and for my family, and given me the opportunity to raise my daughter the way I was able to. And it's just thanks to the service that I was able to do that. So thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
They worked hard.
Just some orientation. We do a lot of picture taking.
Wow, my jacket is...
With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, if I could say just a few words. I've had the pleasure the last year and a half as chief to have Maria as my executive assistant. She has kept me on time, on schedule, and really been so respectful of me and my role as chief, and helping me to understand my role and all of the paperwork that's responsible for completing in that role. I have some more formal comments that I'll make next week, but I can't thank Maria enough for all that she has done for 32 years of dedicated and loyal service to the Niagara Regional Police Service. She's worked in a number of key areas within the service, has always been a consummate professional, and has been an incredible event planner for us. And she was a huge help in the recent gala and organizing that event, and has organized the annual awards ceremony, many other events, our Chief's annual breakfast. Those are big shoes for somebody else to have to fill, and she has done a magnificent job. She will be going into private life and will be an event planner if anybody's looking to hire Maria in the future. She'll do a great job.
It's called In the Event by Maria.
Great segue for that plug. Thank you so much, Maria. It's been my pleasure to work with you over the years.
Thank you, Chief, and it's been my honor and my privilege to work with you and Deputy Chief Flynn and Forty and the rest of the executive team. Honestly, it has been my privilege. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
So those conclude the remarks that I have. I will turn it now to the Chief for his comments this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just first, with regards to your comments in your speech and the comments of Vice Chair Steele, thank you very much for your kind words and for your support of not only myself and Deputies Flynn and Forty, the entire service. Thanks you and the entire board for the support that we've gotten. It's a breath of fresh air to be able to provide information to the board and to be able to be heard and understood, and for the board to truly listen to the concerns that we bring forward. We don't always agree, but we do so respectfully and professionally, and I thank you for that ongoing relationship that we've enjoyed. So thank you. So first off, as was touched on by yourself, Chair, regarding the Chief's annual gala, this year was the third annual gala. I could talk to it for about 10 or 15 minutes, but there is a video that was done by Mike Balsam from Cogeco TV, or Your TV, who attended the gala, and he says quite nicely in 4.5 minutes what I would have taken to say 15. So without any further ado, I'll let the video be shown.
The source is here in Niagara Falls for the third annual Chiefs Gala. It's a fundraiser for two programs supported by the Niagara Regional Police: Pro Action Cops and Kids and Victim Services Niagara.
Pro Action Cops and Kids is a charitable organization that provides a hand up, if you will, to youth in our region, provides them with mentoring opportunities with our police officers, and allows them to gain a better respect and sort of humanize our police officers with them.
We've covered the Student Rocks Guitar Competition and a couple of other things too. A lot of fun events that bring the police officers together with the kids.
Yeah, and there's also the film festival that we do as well, and the kids from all the schools, they do a video on whatever the particular topic of the year is. I think last year was on texting and driving, and it's a great opportunity for them to showcase their skills and build those relationships with our officers.
The other beneficiary of tonight's gala is the Victim Services Niagara. Can you explain what that is all about?
So Victim Services Niagara is really it's an organization of a dedicated group of volunteers who come out in tragic circumstances whether it's victims of crime or victims of tragic circumstance, and they provide emotional support, practical assistance to victims in those situations.
Taryn, how many staff and volunteers are involved in Victim Services Niagara?
Right now we have 4 paid staff and approximately 80 volunteers for us that cover the entire Niagara region.
This gala is a big part in supporting your organization.
Absolutely. So we are only partially funded by the Ministry of the Attorney General, and we rely heavily on donations from the community and fundraising events.
You run some programs as well. One of the things that happened recently was the visit to the hospital with the ice dogs.
Yes, absolutely. So the Ice Dogs threw a teddy bear toss for Victim Services. We got approximately 3,500 bears, and we were able to share that with community agencies, one being the hospital.
The gala featured Stanley Cup and Olympic champion Theo Fleury as guest speaker. His own struggles with mental health and addiction have turned him into a well-known advocate.
I think it's great that the police are, taking this kind of leadership and giving these kids who might not have an opportunity, to get a sort of a head start in life and maybe give them a different perspective of what they're experiencing on a daily basis.
People like you coming out with your story, being so honest about it, and coming out to events like the Chiefs Gala and talking about it, I think it's safe to say that that was a big turning point for people's mental health, for people being able to step up and talk about these issues.
Well, I think it's the first step in the process is putting a voice to your pain and suffering, and but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done after that, and I've been very fortunate because I've run into some really amazing people who have helped me, sort of unpack my trauma history, sort of reframe it and rewire it, and go on to, have an amazing life, and a lot of people don't realize that the most important relationship they have in their life is the one with themselves. And I ran away from that relationship for many, many years. And it wasn't until I started to have a relationship with myself that, all of my other relationships changed. And so, yeah, like I said, it's been absolutely incredible. And, I've been doing this almost now for 10 years. And I would say that I'm more busy this year than I was in year one, which to me is a positive thing, which means that people are more willing now to talk about trauma, mental health, and addiction at any point in time.
Looking forward to tonight's gala and seeing some people who are here to show their support for these programs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got, it's a sellout, so there'll be about 370 people that are here tonight. A lot of great community partners who are here, school boards, and all of the other partners that we work with on a daily basis are here as well, so it should be a great night.
Chief Brian McCullough's gala drew a sold-out crowd of over 300 people at the Americana. To see our full interview with Theo Fleury, please visit the Your TV Niagara website. Reporting for The Source in Niagara Falls, I'm Mike Balsam.
Thanks for that, Deb. This year's event was our third year, and last year I think we raised just over $30,000 that was split amongst the two charities. This year we set a fundraising goal of $60,000, and I'm pleased to announce that we surpassed that goal, and we raised just over $65,000 for both of those charities. The net proceeds will go to Victim Services Niagara and Pro-Action Cops for Kids. And with the board's permission, perhaps at the next board meeting, I can bring representatives from both of those organizations forward and present them with a check. Just want to say a special thanks to, first of all, the organizing committee, my executive assistant, Maria Izzo, Christina Manzi, Ruth Ann Newestig, and Tracy Jeffroy. Their assistance was invaluable, and they made sure that no detail was left to chance. Special thanks to the major sponsors, Rankin Construction, the Americana, and Niagara Casinos, and of course Theo Fleury for him willing to come down and speak. It was just over 380 people in the room. And for most of his presentation, you could hear a pin drop. It was a very, very compelling message that he had to deliver, and we certainly thank him for that. Just a couple of SIU closures that I'll make the board aware of. So at approximately 8 a.m. on January 31st, 2018, one district uniform officers were dispatched to a reported impaired driver in the north end of St. Catharines. Prior to the arrival of the police, the suspect vehicle was involved in a collision and subsequently failed to remain at the scene. Police received multiple calls regarding the aggressive and dangerous manner in which the vehicle was being operated as it fled. The vehicle could not immediately be located by the police. And at approximately 10:07 a.m., we responded to a call on the south end of St. Catharines regarding a suspicious male knocking on doors. Upon arrival, the vehicle involved in the earlier failed to remain collision was located in the vicinity. K-9 unit attended and commenced a track for the suspect and ultimately located a break-and-enter scene that had occurred at a residence. At approximately 10:30 a.m., police responded to a call for a possible armed person near the Meridian Center, and following a search of the area, a 24-year-old male identified as the driver of the vehicle in the earlier failed to remain collision was located at St. Paul Street carrying property stolen from the earlier break-and-enter. Male was arrested and charged with multiple criminal offenses in relation to that incident, or to the multiple incidents that morning. Later that day, while in custody, the male complained of an injury to his nose. He was transported to hospital for examination. It was subsequently determined that the male had sustained a midline, slightly displaced fracture of his nose, and as a result, a notification was made to the SIU. The SIU designated 2 subject officers during the investigation. In the closure letter, Director Tony Leparco advised the SIU investigation was concluded and that there were no grounds for any criminal charges against any of the officers involved, and there were no concerns expressed about the police actions, any of the police actions in that incident. Another incident at approximately 8:41 p.m. on Monday, January 29th, 2 district uniform officers responded to a trespass call at a motel on Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls. A 34-year-old female was observed to be extremely intoxicated, disruptive, and disturbing other guests. At the request of hotel management, the female was trespassed from the premise, but resisted leaving and was assaultive towards the officers, requiring her to be forcibly removed. Due to her extreme level of intoxication, the officers used discretion in not charging the female criminally with assault police, instead transporting her to the hospital. The female later left the hospital and reportedly caused a disturbance. At approximately 1:42 a.m., police again attended the same motel for the same female who was observed causing a disturbance. The female was spoken to by police who advised that she was not allowed to be on the premise. The female refused to listen to the officer and was again resistant and assaultive while being forcibly removed. As a result, the female was placed under arrest for assault police and transported to central holding. While in custody, the female complained of an injury to her hand, and she was transported to hospital for examination. It was subsequently determined that the female had sustained a fractured middle finger on her right hand, and as a result of this injury, a notification was made to the SIU, who invoked their mandate. The SIU designated 1 subject officer and 3 witness officers during the investigation. In a closure letter, Director Leparco advised the SIU investigation had concluded and there were no grounds for criminal charges against any officers, and there were no concerns expressed by any of the involved officers in this incident. Just want to report on our first homicide of 2019, which unfortunately didn't take long. It was on Saturday, January the 5th, at approximately 10:55 a.m. Our officers responded to a residence in the area of Collier Street and Westchester Avenue in the city of St. Catharines for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found a 53-year-old male in distress. He was transported to the hospital where he was later pronounced. Following an investigation by detectives with the homicide unit, a 28-year-old male suspect from Welland was identified, arrested, and charged with second-degree murder. And as a result of the ongoing investigation on Sunday, January 6th, the second suspect was identified, resulting in the arrest of a 30-year-old male with no fixed address. And he too is charged with second-degree murder. Our year-end stats with regards to homicides for 2018, we had 2. 2017, we had 3. 2016, we had 1. And 2015, we had 6. So that's what we have for that. Our year-end statistics with regards to fatal traffic collisions, we ended up with 16 fatal collisions in 2018. Comparatively, in 2017, we had 18, and in 16, we had 20. And then we had a total of 16 life-threatening injury collisions in 2018. So the continued efforts of our frontline uniform officers and our traffic enforcement unit in enforcing the laws with regards to various offenses, speeding, distracted driving, impaired driving, and as well the education component that they do on a regular basis is certainly having an impact. It wasn't a decade ago the chief would have been sitting before or standing before you at the board and telling you that we had one of the highest rates of traffic fatalities in the province, and through the combined efforts of our officers, we've been able to bring that number down significantly. Some items in the news. On December the 13th, 2018, officers responded to the area of Dorchester Road and Thorold Stone Road in the city of Niagara Falls. The officers noticed a silver four-door vehicle parked in an accessible parking spot in front of a convenience store. The officers investigated the vehicle further when it was noticed it was not displaying an accessible parking permit. Further investigation found that the license plate attached to the vehicle was stolen. 3 occupants were subsequently arrested, and as a result of the arrest, officers located a large capacity prohibited rifle and ammunition in the vehicle. A male and female were arrested and charged with various weapons and drug-related offenses. Just goes to show that they were responding to a parking complaint, and we ended up getting a prohibited weapon off the street. So it just shows the risk that our officers face, not only here in Niagara but across the province on a daily basis. On Friday, December the 14th, members of our service continued with their Festive Ride program, conducting sobriety spot checks within the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake and the city of Niagara Falls. During the course of the evening, police spoke with approximately 450 drivers and inquired if they had consumed any alcohol or drugs prior to operating the vehicles, and as a result, 7 drivers were stopped and each were required to provide a sample of their breath. 2 of the drivers stopped were ultimately arrested for impaired driving and issued a 90-day driver's license suspension and had their vehicles towed and seized for 7 days. I just would remind all of members of the public that that was part of our Festive Ride program, but the ride program does carry on throughout the year. So just want to remind people to make smart choices and make sure that everybody arrives alive from their night's festivities. At approximately 12:20 p.m. on Friday, December 21st, officers responded to an address on Anastasia Boulevard in West Lincoln for a report of a disturbance. When officers arrived, they had an interaction with a male, and he was subsequently shot by police. 2 persons were located inside the home, both in critical condition. The police-involved shooting remains under investigation by the province's Special Investigation Unit, and unfortunately, due to the SIU's involvement, we will not be providing any further details with regards to that incident. But what I can say is that we commenced an investigation into that occurrence, which is led by our homicide unit, and as a result, we've charged a 46-year-old male with 2 counts of attempted murder, uttering death threats, and using imitation firearm in the commission of the offense in relation to that incident that occurred on Anastasia Boulevard. At approximately 5:05 p.m. on Wednesday, December the 26th, our officers in St. Catharines were alerted to two suspicious males in the area of Church Street and Niagara Street. Responding officers attended and located two males who then attempted to flee during a foot pursuit by a member of the K-9 unit and our police service dog Zoe. A shot was fired by the suspect. Two firearms were recovered by officers at the scene, and subsequently two males were arrested and charged with numerous weapons-related offenses. On December the 26th, uniformed officers and detectives responded to the area of Vine Street and Seneca Street in St. Catharines for a serious assault with a weapon. A female victim was located in front of the residence in critical condition. She was transported to an out-of-region hospital for further treatment, and as a result of that investigation, a 44-year-old male was identified as a suspect. Grounds were formed for his arrest for attempted murder. In the early morning of December 27th, with the assistance of York Regional Police, the male was located and arrested in the city of Markham. And on January 9th, 2019, an investigation led police to a Niagara Falls address where a male was wanted, was located and arrested for striking an officer with his car. Male was wanted in connection with an incident in Niagara Falls where the vehicle purposely struck the officer, and he then fled the scene, leading officers on a short pursuit. Officers then terminated the pursuit for reasons of public safety, and as a result of tips from the public, we certainly want to thank members of the public and the media for assisting in helping us resolve this incident. And male's been charged and currently before the courts. And that concludes my report this morning. Thank you.
Okay, Chief, thank you very much. I don't see any presentations. Member Gale.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Chief, with regards to the SIU, I can't remember, were we public on, pardon me? Okay, Chief, I'm commenting on the SIU, having a different position now rather than being chair. I could be a little bit more critical on the time of their investigations. As it's been put out there in the public that investigations by our officers in some instances are so much quicker than this. And the public, going back to some of the SIU investigations we've got on the plate right now, is just taking too long. I know a letter was sent by the board, signed by me, asking the SIU to step it up, or that's my own words, but comments to that. And Deb just told me we haven't had a response back on this. Are you aware of anything in the province with the ministry or whoever to get the SIU going? Because we lose officers under suspension, some that may be innocent, some that may be guilty, whatever the case may be. It's up in the air, and the public has more of a right to know than to wait months and months on this. So are you aware of anybody addressing these issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I know that the OACP has played an active role in communicating the frustrations felt by police services, by police officers, by their families, with these investigations hanging over their heads for extended period of time. I think what we have seen with our investigations or our incidents that have been investigated by the SIU, they tend to take in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 months to conclude. So I know that the OACP, I'm not sure if the OAPSB has taken any kind of an advocacy approach to write letters to the SIU and try and expedite those investigations, but I know that the chiefs of police have.
So through you, Chair, may I defer to Member Stewart? Do you know if the OAPSB has done anything on this? I know it's new, our concerns are new, but will it be addressed, or might you bring it up at the next meeting?
Well, I can certainly bring it up at our next meeting, which is February, third week of February. I think the 21st, I believe, is our next OAPSB meeting, and I will raise the issue there, see if anything's been being done from our president.
Thank you for that. And I'm sorry.
I know that the Police Association of Ontario has also raised those concerns. I mean, the word seems to be getting out there to the SIU, but unfortunately the investigations are still taking about the same length of time to complete.
Thank you. And Chair, we know that under the last government, the Safer Ontario Act but that was shelved for the time being, but it had some critical things in there, be it suspension of officers with pay and board makeup and things like this. SIU is another one in there that I'm pleading to the government, because just manpower alone, what we lose on this, let alone the investigations hanging over our heads for many months. So I compliment you on the tap dance that you have to do on answering the same question all the time, and we can't comment at all, as same as the chair's office, but I wish they'd get off their butts, the SIU. Thank you.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Chief. I'm just curious if, just in your report about two homicides in the last year, which I guess second-degree murder charges have released those, but I noticed just from December alone, if I counted right, there were 3 charges of attempt murder. And I'm just curious, in the real issue about safeness in our society, it's sort of like, I don't know how to phrase this properly, but you know, the homicides where somebody succeeded in killing somebody they wanted to kill. In attempt murder, they didn't succeed in killing somebody they wished to kill. I'm just wondering over the year, if you could maybe in the future give us the statistics of just how many attempt murders that there are. And I think that gives us our community a better perspective. When some people say only 2 homicides, you think, oh, well, this is no big deal. It's not a huge number considering our populations. But just in December alone, there were 3 attempted homicides, you might say. So I'm just curious, I don't know if you have it at your fingertips, but if not, maybe in the future, just give us a perspective on how many of those attempted murder things exist.
Certainly we can do that. And, you know, I think in many cases as well, it's the hospitals and medical intervention has assisted many who 10 years ago would have succumbed to the injuries, but you know, through their life-saving efforts, they've been able to save those individuals. That's something that we can certainly bring forward, whether it's, and there's also the assault bodily harms, and the aggravated assault as well, that we can provide sort of a whole snapshot of that.
Any other questions of the Chief this morning? Member McKendrick.
I don't have a question. I have a thank you to the organizers of the gala last week, and apologies for my voice. I'm a little ill today, but didn't want to let the opportunity to pass to thank you for bringing mental health forward as focus and for attention. I think the story that was shared of pain, but also hope and recovery, has the potential to open the conversation and help with resiliency, recovery in our community, and connection and impact on people's lives. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent component. That's in your package. It's items number 5 through number 10. If I could have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Stewart. Questions on those items? I'll just take them by number. Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I have a question on item number 8, which is the report on authorized strength. I'm just wondering on page 2 if you could and comment on us that we have an authorized strength of 708 and we have an actual of 730. I do realize from my time here that there are 13 pre-hires that would be in that group, but if you could explain what the other numbers are.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it's the 13 pre-hires as well as the additional members that have been approved by the board to offset people on LTD or WSIB.
So in the reports,
I'm going to turn that over to Lisa to clarify. Apparently I didn't get that right.
Okay.
So it's the additional pre-hires plus the extras that we hire for people who are on unpaid leaves. The people who are on that you approved to replace, they're not included in the authorized strength at all. They're not in that number at all. So these are the additional people that we've been talking about actually over the last 4 years this has happened. The people, we do an average of the number of people who are off on unpaid leaves, like maternity, LTD, that will be coming back to work, but we do an average and we hire above to cover those vacancies.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to clarify, I didn't want the public to think that we're overhiring, and I just wanted to make sure that the public understands that there are good reasons for those numbers.
Any other items this morning? Okay, so we have a mover and seconder on that. All in favor of the components? Thank you. Next item is number 11. This is the port situation report. A mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by Member McKendrick, seconded by Member Bonham. Discussions on this item, which is something we've looked forward, which we've been advocating for probably the last 4 years. Member Stewart.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. As the chair has said, I've been a long-time advocate of this type of program ever since I was made aware of it at some conferences from Ms. McCluskey from Scotland, who originated the concept. I was just curious as to, the report is excellent and it outlines a lot of the benefits that are happening to members of the community. I'm just wondering if there is any long-term plan to begin to roll out this type of program in the other districts. In other words, what time will the pilot be done and we could move forward with expanding the program?
Through you, Mr. Chair, interestingly enough, I had a visit from Minister Jones last week, and she mentioned the fact that their government is very supportive of situation tables. My comment was that we have seen great results, and I have Constable Jay McKnight is here, who's involved in the situation table in Port Colborne, and if you like, I can bring him forward, and he can, if you have any questions specifically with regards to sort of the positive results of the interactions that we've had, he can speak to that. But my comments to Minister Jones, and I'll echo those comments to you, is that we're very supportive of this approach, but it's the investment of resources that would be required by the service to commit. St. Catharines alone, I can see us having to commit 4 to 6 officers full-time, and that's all they would be doing is working with the situation table, along with members from the Canadian Mental Health Association, members from all of the other partners that are involved in that situation table. It has great potential, but it requires a commitment by government to want to fund that properly so that we can reap the benefits of that being expanded.
Just further to that, from my understanding from this report and of course being aware of other situation tables really across the country, is that after the initial investment, that investment in time and personnel begins to pay dividends back in time saved by calls for service reductions, by hospital emergency visit reductions, and assorted other things that begin to add up. So I'm just wondering, is it a requirement just really for some seed money to get it going, and that eventually it starts to become a really cost-effective way of doing business? And wondering how we can work with that. I think waiting for ministry money can be a long, painstaking process, and I'm just wondering if we can build on the savings in one area to expand to a next area and so on.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think it's more than just seed money. There would be a commitment in terms of resources that we would have to commit to the situation table to not only bring matters forward to the table and speak to them, to manage the table, to have meetings. You can't have, if you're concerned about individuals who are at acutely high levels of risk, you can't have a meeting every 6 weeks, because then it kind of defeats the purpose of saying that somebody's at an acute level of risk. So the meetings need to be done on a very regular, timely basis. So again, it's the commitment of resources to the table, but also the follow-up that comes from the table. And there is actions we have found through the Port Colborne situation table, that the majority of those actions that take place, that we're not the lead on that it's another community partner. And again, it's the capacity of those community partners to be able to take over that. So it's not just the police and I wish it was that simple, but there are a lot of other stakeholders, school boards, hospitals, family and children services, that would all have to commit to that situation table. And yes, then you would see the benefits reaped from that.
Okay, through you, Chair, and thank you for that, Chief. It's just such a valuable program. I hope we'll see the day when I guess in my view, we shift a little bit more resources towards prevention, so that later on we'll have less resources required for, quote, cleaning up what happens when we don't. So I look forward to that day.
You and me both. Thank you.
Chief, would you like to have Constable Jason or Jay McKnight? Would he like to come forward and bring some comments or talk about the success? I see this as a great success.
Well, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the service for giving me the opportunity to partake in such an endeavor. It was one that I became interested in immediately. I think the report speaks for itself, but as Chief's mentioned, it's sort of a really small picture into the endeavors which have taken place. I think the key component to a lot of it is the collaborative effort that takes place and the relationship building that takes place amongst all of those different organizations. I've been fortunate. It's a small community, and the pilot project's been operating in a small capacity, but we still continue to expand those agencies that need to be involved in order for something to succeed. I can't say enough at how powerful the program is and how useful it is to the officers on the road when they can make a phone call to myself, and within a matter of half an hour, I can have those individuals connected with 3-4 different services. So it's, while the numbers speak for themselves, they don't speak for the matters that don't necessarily hit the acute level. Like Mr. Stewart's talking about, becoming more and more proactive is what the program does. Although there's been 47 situations that have been brought forward, I can say roughly there's been another 30 or 40 situations that have come to my attention that I've been able to alleviate before it's hit that acute level. So in previous ways, without the involvement of the table, those would have gotten to the acute level where officers were approaching and attending on multiple different occasions, just to get there and say, well, there's nothing we can do. We don't have these associations with, or the sort of relationship with all these services. Now there's that open line of communication between those services, and we're able to alleviate those risks before they get to that level. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and as the Chief says, it is a massive commitment. It's solely what I do right now, and there's not enough hours in the day for me to get to it on a regular basis, but we're plugging along and trying to make people realize how powerful the program can be. And again, I thank the service for the opportunity.
And I just want to add, from the on the perspective of the board. Thank you for your work there. As I said, this is a project we started, I think, 4 years ago, February or March in Port Colborne. It was a snowy day like this, and it was slow getting started. I'm so grateful to see what has been accomplished, and I think going forward, this is a step in the right direction. I would share the view of Member Stewart and perhaps the other members of the board. We would love to see this in every community, but we also recognize the fact that this could be, or does have a fairly large staffing potential to it. But the work that you're doing in Port Colborne is a credit to yourself and certainly to the service and its participation at the situation table. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Bonham.
Just to offer a comment and to inquire, I would assume that the School Resource Officer program is a worthwhile and an adjunct to your efforts with the roundtable here. Would that be a fair statement? That not all the clients are non-students, and that we are using these two programs in a complementary manner?
Yes and no. It depends on the complexity of the situations and where they reach the acute level. I don't have my numbers in front of me. I'd say approximately 5 to 8 of the situations have involved youth or children of the school age. A lot of those situations and the acute risk is actually within the household. The school board, I don't believe, has brought. The unfortunate part is we still don't have a full-time committed member of the school board coming to the table on a regular basis. So those numbers, again, could be skewed. There could be a lot more. They could be brought forward possibly by that school resource officer or by the representative from the school board if we had that representative. So to say there's a direct correlation, it would be difficult to do, but definitely the school resource officers will be of a benefit as it moves forward.
Okay, any other comments or questions? We had a mover and seconder. Member McKendrick.
Through you, Chair. I just wanted to share my appreciation. My Canadian Mental Health Association has been involved, and I know that the work of our officers to build relationships, the patience, the persistence that's taken to get the success that you've had. Just kudos and thank you to you for your efforts.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. In favor of receiving the report? Thank you. Next item is number 12. That's a special fund request. It's Building Disaster Resilience in Niagara. Mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Gale, seconded by Member Steele. Discussions on that item. I believe this conference took place last Friday. Any questions? Member Bonham?
I'm wondering how often does this group meet? Is it monthly or biannually or annually, or is it event driven, or is there a regular program of events that moves it forward on a consecutive basis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an event-driven incident that happens on an annual basis, but members of the service and emergency management coordinators for the municipalities and for the region meet on a very regular basis. So this is a one-time conference where they bring in keynote speakers to address issues of common interest, but they also do meet regularly.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion before us is a donation of $500 from the special fund. All in favor? Thank you. That matter is dealt with. Number 13, special fund request, the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement Workshop. It's a request for $250. A mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Member Stewart, seconded by Member Steele. Discussions on that item. Not seeing any. Show of hands in favor. Thank you. Item number 14. This is the special fund request. This is the International Police Hockey Tournament, the women's hockey team. Mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Gale, seconded by Member Bonham. Discussions on this item. This is a donation request for $500. All in favor? Thank you. Number 15, special fund request for the International Police Hockey Tournament NRP's Elite Team. Do we have an A and B group? Mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Member Steele, seconded by Member Stewart. Discussions on this item. So the donation here is for, what are we asking for? $500. Show of hands in favor. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the fact that there is an elite team and that I don't know about it tells you something about my hockey abilities.
Is a certain deputy chief involved in this?
I don't believe he is.
Okay.
Or he's kept that from me.
Thank you. Number 15. This is a special fund request from the, where am I? Sorry, I'm off. Number 16. Annual report from the board. Mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member Steele. Any discussion? But I will ask Ms. Reed if she wishes to comment on that report of the work that we've done in 2018.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have any specific comments. Just outlined the statistics for the number of meetings, number of agenda items, and board workload, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from board members? All in favor of receiving the report? Thank you. Now we're into the material that was put out as supplemental. We start with item number 17. That is the minutes from the special board meeting held on the 16th. Mover and seconder for the minutes from last Wednesday. Moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member McKendrick. Show of hands in favor. Just to note, there is a typographical error on the top. That's Wednesday, January 16th of 2019, not 2018. Next item is number 18. It's the amendments to the Niagara Regional Police Service and Niagara Regional Police Service Board proposal operating budgets. And there were updates distributed as part of our binder from last Wednesday. So I could have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member Stewart. Discussions. This is a discussion on the item of the budget with the amended pages. So I would ask, I'll ask the chief to present first because it's his budget, and then we'll get into discussion. Chief? If you want to go.
PowerPoint slide, do we have?
Yeah.
You could start it at slide 10. No, I'll speak to it. I just want you to push the button. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we spent a fair bit of time last week speaking of the rationale and the context around the needs and challenges that we're facing, I won't go into that. So I'll start with our proposed operating budget. So as in prior years, the service budget process included a detailed line-by-line rationalization and review of discretionary spending. Base budgets were prepared by program managers and were validated against prior year spending patterns. The proposed operating budget is $147.4 million and includes a 3.5% increase, which represents $4.8 million that is primarily attributed to the impact of the implementation of the 2019 increases included in the arbitrated collective agreement award. A 0.8% increase, or representing $1.1 million, reflects the impact of restoring the one-time capital funding that was used to reduce the impact of the collective agreements arbitrated award in the 2018 budget. It also includes 2.2% or $3.1 million increase in program changes that are being proposed after we undertook to implement a number of mitigation strategies. I'll walk you through just a high level of the various program changes. First off, relates to human trafficking. Proposed budget seeks to modernize our service delivery with a particular focus on mitigating risk to both our most vulnerable persons and the service itself. Matters related to human trafficking were identified during our community consultation, during our business or strategic planning process. And we know that incidents of human trafficking continue to rise in the Niagara region and Canada more broadly. We also know that victims of human trafficking are mostly young women. 93% of Canada's trafficking victims come from within Canada. 50% of Canada's human trafficking victims are Indigenous, and 75% of those in prostitution were forced as children. Due to the prevalence of the tourism industry here in Niagara, there is a strong link to human trafficking that has been identified by our service and by other police services throughout the province. Given these facts, we are proposing the creation of 2 detective constables working within the Special Victims Unit. Having a dedicated team responsible for these crimes will enhance our situational awareness of these matters, enhance our working relationships with other community stakeholders, and further develop our victim-based approach. And it is consistent with what other police services are doing to address human trafficking in other jurisdictions. The unit will be supported by our Special Victims Unit. The sexual assault investigators. Special Victim Unit also includes sexual assault investigators. The team consists of 4 constables, and this budget is proposing that the team be increased to 6 police officers. The staffing levels within the team that deals with some of the most devastating incidents and investigations in the service has not increased since the unit's inception, following the recommendations of Justice Archie Campbell. Justice Campbell was commissioned to conduct a judicial review to review and report on the roles of the police and other agencies following the Bernardo investigation. At the time of inception in 1996, they were responsible for the investigation of serious sexual assaults, and since that time their mandate has evolved and they now assume carriage of all sexual assault investigations. However, the staffing levels have not been adjusted. In 2017, an internal review revealed that the number of reported sexual assaults within the Niagara region have been increasing at a time when these matters have become increasingly more complicated to investigate. Victim assistance and management has become more intensive, and staffing levels make it difficult to respond to these matters in a timely fashion. Court time has also greatly increased. A workload analysis comparing the Niagara Regional Police staffing levels to 3 neighboring police services revealed that we have the lowest staffing levels amongst those services. And members have expressed concern in regard to the impact that the workload has had on both their psychological and physical wellness. Corporate clinical psychologist. In order to maximize our ability to serve the community, we know that we require healthy and engaged personnel. In that capacity, the service is committed to member wellness. A psychologically healthy organization includes trying to improve and maintain psychological wellness, reduce personal stress, reduce occupational stress, and any other areas that impact the overall well-being of our members. The Member Support Unit is currently administered by a sworn member at the rank of Staff Sergeant with the support of the occupational health nurse. Psychologists are routinely contracted to provide professional assistance in assessing, evaluating, and educating members in areas as per the Safeguard program, where there is a greater risk of occupational stress injuries. Those would be units like our child abuse unit, sexual assault unit, homicide unit, tactical unit, our ICE, Internet Child Exploitation Unit, all have been identified as high stress or high frequency, and so they're part of that safeguarding program. Psychologists are also commissioned in preparing pre-employment psychological assessments for new sworn police officers and to respond to ad hoc critical incidents to meet members' needs. Current model presents an issue with respect to the occupational health nurse ability to meet the demands of their own role respecting attendance management and other programs and is not sustainable over time. At this time, we recognize the need to further enhance these matters, and we're proposing the creation and employment of a corporate clinical psychologist. This medical practitioner would liaise with all other practitioners to ensure that we're meeting the members' needs and are employing best and current practices. This would also be in keeping with the direction that Niagara EMS has been embarked upon. In fact, they're currently undertaking the opportunity to fill a position for a clinical psychologist, and this approach is also aligned with what other police services in Ontario are embarking upon in their commitment for member wellness. The recruitment clerk position, right now the recruitment of the right persons into our service is paramount to maintain and build upon the trust and confidence that our service enjoys in the Niagara region. Recruiting unit has historically had a civilian assistant who performed numerous duties, including but not limited to being the primary point of contact for all the new applicants, sorting applications, managing all interviews, medical and follow-up appointments, assisting with scheduling local focus interviews, uniform job postings, promotional exams and processes, and preparing reports for the executive leadership team. In 2012, during a period of reduced demand for recruits, this position was eliminated and its duties were merged with those of the human resource assistant. With the development of the electronic application submissions, changes in the recruiting background investigation process, and increased workload in the career development office, the demands placed on the HR assistant have grown significantly. In January 2018, in order to meet the increased workload demands, a temporary employee was retained to assist the human resource assistant. The temporary employee has been performing duties for the recruiting and career development, as well as some work for the professional development inspector. Current model is not sustainable and is subject to limitations outlined within the civilian collective agreement regarding the prolonged use of temporary employees. At this time, it's both financially and operationally responsible to recreate this position that would support the career development, recruiting, and labor relations, and eliminate the need for temporary employee support. The transfer of the bylaw licensing unit to the region. So on November 29th, 2017, the region commenced a review of the Niagara Regional Police Services, including business licensing. The review determined that the Niagara region was an outlier compared to other municipalities in its having the police enforce business licensing. In order to align with industry practice, the region has engaged in a project to transition the enforcement of business licensing back to the Niagara region, which is targeted to occur on July 1st of 2019. At the July 26, 2018 Police Service Board meeting, the board received correspondence from the region that endorsed the migration of business licensing to the region's office, and the program change represents a net zero impact on the budget, and there will be 3 uniform officers and 2 civilian positions that will be eliminated from our authorized strength. The realignment of record staffing. The records unit has 1 manager and 2 supervisors and 42 members working under them. The records supervisor has 22 direct reports. The information manager supervisor has 20 direct reports that are comprised of 9 different job functionalities. The information management supervisor has several other duties that they're responsible for relating to disclosure of records and information retention. History and Records has shown that it's not feasible for one supervisor to be responsible for 20 members spanning 9 different job functions. A detailed business case was provided to support this request, which provides for the elimination of 1 clerical position and the addition of 1 supervisory position. The clerical position was identified for elimination following a detailed process review and the implementation of a number of identified efficiencies. The manager of IT, with emerging technologies, it's clear that the manner that we function is continually evolving, and we are becoming ever more reliant on technology. The service is inherently information-based, and re-examination of the reporting relationships was undertaken to ensure that we're effectively advancing technological needs and delivering the requisite services in a manner that mitigates organizational risk. The current structure places the IT director in a position whereby he's having to engage in transactional issues daily rather than focusing on strategic priorities, which is not really conducive to effective management or leadership. Currently, the IT director has 8 persons reporting directly to him. To enhance clarity around roles and responsibilities, it's recommended that the service realign the technology services unit under 3 managers into the following 3 units: a network security, infrastructure and client services, technology projects and applications, and public safety radio and telecommunications. This proposed divisional structure would provide the optimal alignment of resources under the director, and the creation of a one new manager position allows the service greater supervisory structure or enhanced supervisory structure. In the communications unit, in keeping with our desire to be evidence-based, a workload study was commissioned to examine the communications unit in its entirety. A firm by the name of Federal Engineering executed this study of our communications unit, which includes the primary service answer point, or PSAP, 911 call center for the Niagara region, police call takers, and police dispatchers, and determined that we were not providing adequate supervision. The industry standard for span of control for a supervisor in a communications center is a ratio of 1 supervisor to 7 staff members. Present ratio is often double the recommended best practice, exposes the service and the board to considerable liability in the event of a major police incident, and it frustrates the ability to provide effective oversight, training, and mentoring of new employees, and pay attention to quality assurance. There have recently been coroner's inquests that have examined the response of communication centers in other jurisdictions, and adequate supervision was a key facet to some very negative outcomes during those coroner's inquests. Although the service will continue to study staffing levels in the communications unit, there is no way to effectively mitigate the lack of supervision without adding additional members. The service is recommending 3 supervisors' positions be created, and we will repurpose 1 civilian courier position within the service. The study continues, or also includes a recommendation for an increase in the number of communicators, and we'll be studying those needs with a view of finding efficiencies within the area that of times and day that have high volume, and realigning schedules to match that. The Real-Time Operations Center. In 2017, the board will recall that we implemented a 1-year pilot project for a real-time operations center. Upon conclusion of the pilot project, a business case was prepared to demonstrate the value of a near 24/7 real-time operations center, and we put forward recommendations to the board at that time on a path forward. The benefits of the real-time operations center included the following. It leveraged technology to ensure that we were providing the highest quality of policing to our residents, business owners, and visitors, provided increased situational awareness at all levels across the organization, provided real-time actionable intelligence to first responders, reduced human resources and time spent on calls for service, monitoring and managing the deployment and redeployment of resources to maximize overall efficiencies in operations, and it expanded use of a number of CCTV cameras with private and public stakeholders to expedite the identification of suspects and persons who may be in crisis. It enhanced business intelligence, including real-time operational administrative dashboards to support data-driven and strategic decision-making, and it improved community partnerships and citizen engagement tools. In keeping with our commitment to leverage technology and enhance public safety, the service is recommending the creation of 8 new civilian positions to work within the Real-Time Operations Center. The creation of this program will also coincide with repurposing of our duty officers or duty inspectors into the center to provide senior level oversight of all significant initiatives in real or near real time. With respect to emerging legislation, as you know, the purpose of contingency reserves is to address significant unforeseen issues that may develop after the year's operations have commenced and after budgets have already been set. The funding target for the contingency reserves, according to region policy, is a minimum of 10% and a maximum of 15% of gross operating expenditures. The service contingency reserve is currently zero. Actually, it's 9 cents. As a result of prior year mitigation exercises, although the service foresees additional costs relating to upcoming cannabis legislative changes, at this time the precise costs and or offsetting funds are not available. Police service across Ontario have had ongoing discussions in regard to all aspects of the impact of the Cannabis Act, including financial. The financial costs include those that are known and mandatory, as well as those that are anticipated and expected. The known and mandatory costs include training, supplies, and equipment, and these costs will be easier to quantify and measure once those have been finalized and we begin incurring those costs. The anticipated and expected costs include those expenditures related to increased violations, collisions, injured persons, and investigations and enforcement activities that will be required to support the legislation. At this time, there is limited information regarding the funding that the service and or the region will receive, and still many unknowns. There's also considerable uncertainty around the implementation of the Safer Ontario Act, the Ontario Special Investigations Act, and the numerous recommendations that have been put forward by Justice Tulloch in relation to the police oversight, as well as his recent review of the street check legislation, which we'll be discussing later. At the very least, there will be a financial impact in relation to training our officers on the new legislation once it's implemented, and potentially other costs that have yet to be realized and or identified. To mitigate the risks with this legislative change and other potential legislative changes, the service is recommending that $250,000 be transferred to a contingency reserve. In the event that the funds are required in 2019, the service will report back to the board to make recommendations regarding transfer of funds to offset any potential deficits. Foot patrol for one district. In October 2018, the Mayor of St. Catharines presented a formal request to the board for this service to establish a permanent full-time downtown foot patrol presence to deal with the complex, multi-layered social economic issues that are occurring in downtown St. Catharines. It is the view of the concerned residents and business owners that public nuisance issues and criminal offenses have increased since the relocation of the NRPS headquarters from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls. Statistically, there has indeed been a large increase in calls for service in relation to certain call types during 2018 when compared to 2016 and 2017 statistics. The issues of a marked increase in the number of apparently homeless people that have been attracted to the downtown areas, in addition to very prominent opioid addiction and mental health issues, have no doubt contributed to the increase in calls for service. In response to the situation, the service has focused on increased foot patrol presence in the downtown core of St. Catharines by utilizing on-duty uniform officers. Given the competing demands for calls for service, this approach has proven to be less than ideal. The request is to increase strength to establish a full-time 2-constable foot bike patrol unit, and the primary function of these units would be to perform community engagement either on foot or on bike in the downtown and surrounding areas, and any other associated duties. They will, of course, be available to assist regular patrol units in exigent circumstances. Since October of 2018, a uniform officer has been temporarily assigned as a foot patrol officer in the downtown core of St. Catharines, and the service has received numerous positive comments from business owners in the area, from library staff, and from support agencies in the downtown core, indicating that they feel safer with this visible police presence. Lastly, the school resource officers. The NRPS School Resource Officer Program was launched with 7 constables and 1 supervisor in 2012-2013 school year. Our SROs work in over 30 high schools and alternate schools across the region, from the DSBN, the Niagara Catholic District School Board, Conseil Scolaire de District Catholique Central Sud, and Conseil Scolaire Viamonde. I apologize for my French. The program has proven to be an excellent opportunity for the police to interact with and educate youth. The officers provide a regular visible presence within their schools, provide presentations, identify and resolve school-related problems, and utilize extrajudicial measures in cooperation with school administrators and community partners. Our community partners include Contact Niagara, Path Zones Mental Health, John Howard Society, Port Cares, Youth Resources Niagara, Youth Justice Services, and Pro Action Cops and Kids. The program has been regarded an overwhelming success by all involved. From a crime prevention perspective, there appears to be a very strong correlation between the implementation of the full-time SRO program and a significant drop in youth crime. When you compare the 2011 data, which was the year prior to us initiating the SRO program, when you compare that data to 2018 data, there has been a 54.7% reduction in youth charges laid, and a similar reduction of 29.9% in extrajudicial measures involving youth. We've seen tremendous community support for the SRO program and its effectiveness, which was validated in a satisfaction survey that was completed in 2017. The feedback from teachers and school administrators was overwhelmingly positive and highlighted the following. 83.5% of educators felt that students benefited from the SRO program. 90.5% of educators overwhelmingly felt that the school environment was safer with the presence of a school resource officer. And 96.6% of educators across the region believe that the discontinuation of the school resource officer program would negatively impact students. Between 2014 and 2017, a qualitative and quantitative research study was undertaken by Dr. Linda Duxbury and Dr. Craig Bennell from Carleton University regarding the Peel Regional Police SRO program, the finding of which were released in January of 2018, which validate the findings of the NRPS survey. Students felt safer. There were enhanced relationships between youth and police, which led to greater trust, which led to enhanced intelligence gathering to gather information about robberies, drugs, and other special victims. In essence, the SRO program led to more crimes being solved and serves as a great crime prevention strategy. but perhaps the most interesting finding related to the social economic return on investment, which determined that for every dollar invested in the Peel SRO program, a minimum of $11.13 of social and economic value was created. Based on this research, it's reasonable to believe that the NRPS and our community would realize similar value. There's some factors that have impacted the workload of our NRPS school resource officers that I want the board to be aware of. In 2014, the DSBN introduced reducing incidents of suspension and expulsion, which is the acronym RISE, including Second Chance Alternative School Program with a maximum of 20 students with an average of 8 to 15 students at one time. In 2017, the RISE program was expanded and amalgamated into Briardale School located in St. Catharines. This school now has an average of 90 to 100 students coming from all across the region to this school. It's placed increased demands on the SRO officers, particularly those assigned to working in St. Catharines, as workload for the SROs was increasing due to the growth of the RISE program. The staffing level was reduced in order to address competing service priorities. In 2017, in response to the growing trend of technology-based crime investigations, the executive leadership team identified the need for a full-time computer cybercrime unit as a priority. A business case was put forward for the board consideration in the 2017 budget process. However, in order to meet budget guidance, the proposal was not approved. That said, the need for our cybercrime unit did not diminish, and in order to fulfill this need, a school resource officer was repurposed to the cybercrime unit. In doing so, this reduced the authorized strength of the SROs to 6 constables from 7. The school resource officer position has not been backfilled, ultimately leaving 2 officers responsible for overseeing 11 high schools and alternate schools in St. Catharines. At the same time, we have seen a significant increase in the number of incidents related to the misuse of social media technology within schools, such as texting, sexting, harassment, and bullying, placing even greater demands on our SROs. Our SROs are regularly requested to attend elementary schools for visits and presentations, especially in the area of the safe use of social media. Research has demonstrated that prevention programs that work to reduce child victimization have had the greatest impact on children who are of preschool or elementary school age. Unfortunately, the reduced authorized strength and increased demands has made it difficult to meet the competing demands and expectations of the SRO program. In consultation with our community partners, we believe, and the research supports, that the community will benefit from the SRO program being extended to elementary schools. This will allow our officers to build positive relationships and educate both students and staff on the risks and safety. With your support is the intention of the service to dedicate 2 additional SRO officers to address the gaps and growing demands placed on the SRO program. I would note as well that this program change is aligned with one of the goals that was contained within the 2016-2018 business plan to assess the viability of developing a program to address the needs of grade children from K to 8. Next slide. So as a result of your supporting our proposed budget, the region and citizens we serve will continue to realize a number of benefits. These benefits are not limited to, but include the following: the efficient management of resources, continued decrease in overtime by not further reducing the number of officers on the front line, the continuity of high-risk files within our Special Victims Unit, the ability to maintain public safety and to maintain the ability to respond to calls for service in a timely manner, enhanced community engagement. We will comply with provincial adequacy standards. We'll have the ability to support emerging legislation like cannabis and other emerging legislation like the Safer Ontario Act. It'll demonstrate a commitment to wellness to support our members. It supports what the community has told us during the consultation and outreach phases of the 2019-2021 business plan. And it supports the region's strategic priorities, such as having a region that moves people and goods and promotes economic development throughout our region. So with that, I will stop, and if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Member Gale, then Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry, I have 3 or 4 questions here on it. And Chief, I just want some definitions or descriptions of it, because I support this. But number 1, the foot patrol. If you can go back to the last slide, if you don't mind. The white one. Yeah, please. It doesn't matter. The foot patrol, when I was reading the report a few weeks ago, it seemed like it said that it was the officers were operating from 7 in the morning till 5 at night on the report. So if that's correct, can you please explain to me what days, what times of year they work? Are there 2 working together all the time? Are they walking together? And if those are the hours, I would have thought that you can define why they're 7 to 5, because I would have thought there was problems at the bars at nighttime or things like this. Please. No, I have other questions after that. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the proposal is for 2 officers, and we really want to have the luxury to be able to flex their hours according to special events that are occurring. We have heard from business owners that the majority of the issues are occurring during the day, but there are times at night as well where we've seen an increase activity in the downtown core with the bars and whatnot. That's perhaps a little bit different problem than what's experienced in the daytime with the congregation of people in the homeless people and people related to drug overdoses and mental health issues being in the downtown core. So the primary focus will be from Monday to Friday and 7 to 5, but again, we have the ability with 2 officers to be able to have split shifts so that one may be starting at 7 in the morning and another one starting at 12 noon, let's say, and they have some overlap, but extend the hours into the early evening as well.
Okay, through you, Chair. So it's not 2 officers walking side by side, walking down the street?
It can be, but we think that we can get bigger bang for our buck by having them work different hours.
And I agree. I just thought that at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning, you might have 2 officers walking on either side of the street, and I thought it was a waste, but that's your call on that. Number 2, have you thought about sharing, or we made a motion a few years back about sharing services with the region, with other police forces and stuff like this. I look at the IT manager and I look at how big the region is with the IT department. I imagine we are big here, and that is there any sharing there that we can do with the region? And I understand the confidentiality of what we do on the police. But are you keeping this in mind when you look at some of this stuff? Because next thing we'll have a report at the region saying that we should get one. And maybe I look at the price at IT manager at $155,000. So another question to that is, where do you come up with the wages for these people? Is there a standard? And is the $155 with benefits included? So two questions, sharing and how do you come up with the wages for something like this?
So through you, you recall, I think it was last year or about 18 months ago, the region had requested that we do a back office review of various functions that there's overlap between the service and the region, like HR, finance, IT was also one of those areas that was reviewed, and at that time, with a focus of could we share resources. The recommendation from that review was that there were no sharing opportunities, that both units, although they're performing essentially the same function, there was work to be done in both the region and the service, and there were no efficiencies that could be gained by sharing those resources. So I hope that addresses that part of the question. The second part relates to the salary. So the salary, we have bands within each of, whether it's an SOA position, Senior Officers Association position, or an Niagara Region Police Association position. So based on the job description and the anticipated duties and responsibilities that would be associated with that position, we temporarily, we essentially estimate where that job would fit within the bands. And then a year after the job is in place, we do a review of that to determine whether or not the job has taken on any additional roles or if it's taken on less roles than what we had thought, and we do a comparison to see whether or not it's banded appropriately. So there are checks and balances to ensure that it's at the appropriate level based on all of the other comparable jobs in the service.
Okay, through you, Chair. So continuing on that salary, like constables, you have first class and third class, and that, is there a standard with IT? So is that 155 going to be 185 in a year just based on stages, not the contract, or?
There are 3 stages to that position, and is that the average?
Yeah, that's what I want to know, if it's the average.
It's the first stage at this point.
Okay, what is full, there's 3 stages you said to it, or 2? 3? After the 3rd stage, what would that position be earning, please?
It's about a 3% increase.
Okay. Okay, I guess, and that's probably standard throughout the province, eh? Okay. Third, you gave us the brochure this morning on the Peel, and you referenced it in that. My question is, we all support, I think the new member might probably supports it, but we all support the school resource officers. We understand education and the schools and that as a board here. We've always talked that way, and so have you, and so has the service. But Toronto, in their infinite wisdom, said they don't have school resource officers anymore. They chose not to, be it the chief in consultation with the board or whatever. Yet the community right beside them, Peel, puts out a brochure saying all the benefits of the school resource officer, which I agree with. I haven't read the whole thing, but I just flashed through it now. I get concerned because we follow Toronto. It seems whatever happens in Toronto ripples down here, be it wages, be it carding, be it whatever. What happens in Toronto comes here. Do you have a concern, or I have a concern, that one service so big could say no to officers in the schools, yet right beside them, and I'm stealing Member Bonham's thunder because he brought it to my attention here, that right beside them, they're saying no to this, and then we have a full report saying the value of it, and we recognize the value of school resource officers. So how can we even consider anything Toronto does in the future? Maybe that's a flippish type comment, but be it bulletproof vests, be it everything else that they study and we learn from. Do you have a concern on something like this, that they can be, I feel, so wrong, and yet next door they have a fulsome report saying it's a benefit?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on what the Toronto Police Service does and what they consider to be a priority or what they don't consider to be a priority. What I can say is what I observed in my discussions with Chief Saunders and other senior leaders from Toronto Police Service, they have a lot of competing demands, as do we, and so I'm not sure if that decision was economic based or what the rationale was for it. Clearly, from the recommendations of Dr. Duxbury and Dr. Bonnell, the findings from Peel support what we have witnessed here in Niagara is huge benefits in the reduction of crime, reduction of particularly youth crime, greater enhanced relationships with youth in our community.
Brought it down to 6.32 or something like this, yet you're showing 6.5. Is it 6.32 or is it 6.5?
It's 6.5, and the dollar value has been, for the fuel is at $1.20, I believe.
But I thought we brought it, with the savings, it brought it down to 6.32 or so. I was just hoping that that money wasn't spent somewhere else.
It's for the additional school resource officers.
Okay, so those savings went to the school resource. I'm not going to knock that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, just on the theme, you know, I've certainly been supportive in my time here for school resource, seeing the preventative values that happen there. Just following what was happening in Toronto with the similar fear that it would go down here is, I think what I noticed in the big difference is we have a different model here, and that all schools get some resource time. In Toronto, they chose a different model where they highlighted schools with difficulties, and then those schools started to feel that they were targeted as bad schools and that there was discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it turned into a big political issue. So I appreciate the model that we use that say that all schools have some difficulties and all schools benefit from the resource officers. So I think the different model has more to do with it than anything else. We just chose a different route, and our route seems to be working nicely. But my first real question really resolved around on the reserves. As you put, the reserves aren't actually zero. They're like pennies, might be a rounding error. But nonetheless, I was just curious on two fronts here, like, let's say 5-6 years ago or whatever, what kind of reserve levels for contingencies were existing? Obviously, somehow between then and now, they've gone down to virtually zero, and now we're trying to build them up. So the first question is, where were they 5-6 years ago? And then what is our plan to say over the next period of time, how to rebuild those reserves so that we're on a good financial footing? So I'm just curious of a little bit of a tracking of how it went down and how we can build it back up again. And I know it's difficult. I feel like when you're replenishing reserves, it's sort of like when you had a wonderful Christmas and then your Visa bill comes in January. You know, sometimes you got to pay for it. So I was just curious of that, and do we have a plan over the next few years to replenish to what level, and how would that compare with, say, 5-6 years ago?
So through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the reserves, I'll let Lisa speak to what the reserves were in past years. And with regards to our strategy going forward, we would obviously like to replenish those reserves. I think, you know, much like our own home finances, it's always, you know, good to have money in the bank for a rainy day type of situation. And that would be our goal and our strategy going forward. And we would welcome the opportunity to have further discussion with the board going forward as to how we can achieve that goal together, because ultimately it's we need the cooperation and buy-in from the board to have that occur. So I will, but I agree that there is certainly benefit in having those reserves replenished. And I'll turn it over to Lisa at this point to talk about our past balances in the contingency reserve especially.
So the balance in the contingency reserve about 2014 at 2012, 2014 was about $500,000. It fluctuates depending on what we know is upcoming. So there are points where we will put funds in there if we know that there's bargaining outstanding, that we will actually, as part of our budget, put funds in there. But it was at about $5,000 for about 5 years before, $500,000 for about 5 years before that. Our unfunded liabilities reserve is the one that used to be going in about 1.1 million a year. We had a strategy, and I don't know who would remember this, but the province started giving us uploading money a few years ago, and so we started putting about $1.1 million a year into our unfunded liabilities reserves. We've reduced that over the last 5-6 years, and now we only put $225,000 a year in that. Our strategy for the contingency reserve, as you can see, is putting the $250,000, hopefully a year, back into it, and then to put any surpluses that we have at the end of the year back in, because we need the contingency reserve for the years when we have the deficits. And then for our unfunded liability strategy, we'll be bringing back, we didn't include it in this budget because we didn't want to go back higher than 6.5, but probably in next year's budget or years after, we'll have to come up with a strategy to look at our unfunded liabilities as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Member Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Chief, so just something that Member Gale touched on. So the reduction in the gas portion of our budget, because we talked about this last time, both Member Gibson and I, we talked about the sexual assault unit, ramping up that to 2 officers. Comment back from you was, let us go back and look at this. So then what you're telling me, only because Kevin's not here, is the fact that you believe the resource officers should be looked at this year's budget. Okay, because like Member Gale, a little confused on where that money was going and what we kind of came out last week. So, okay, I see that now, which is fine. I do support that. On the cannabis side, through the city of Port Colborne, our treasurer was telling us that the region's share for the police board was around $235,000 this year in the first give. You mentioned earlier that you weren't told of a number yet. Has the region just not released that, or has that changed?
What I knew that there was money that was coming to the region, but it was dependent on how many municipalities, at least my understanding of it was dependent on how many municipalities were going to enter into the sale of cannabis in their or allowing the sale of cannabis in your municipality. It was that the funding to the region was contingent upon that.
Through the chair, our discussion was a little bit different than that. Because the Niagara region has responsibility over the police force where the municipalities don't, it was a separate levy to the region as a whole. And then the only change in the dollar value for those that opted in or opted out was based on the municipal level. So just based on what our treasurer was telling us. So I mean, maybe he was wrong. I do question that, because my understanding it wasn't contingent on who was in or out, because the police wasn't operated by each municipality. It was operated by the region as a whole. So, but was the number around 235,000? Was that something that was, has that been passed along to you from the region?
And again, the number wasn't solidified, but whatever money was coming to the region, it was my understanding that it was going to be split 3 ways, and that it would be a portion would go to public health, a portion would go to EMS, and a portion would go to the Niagara Regional Police Service.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
But just to clarify that, then the actual dollar numbers is something that has not been cemented. Like, we really don't know the exact number at this point in time.
That's correct, and I think there was some benchmarking data that was going to be required from us to determine what the impact of the cannabis legislation was on each of our areas, whether it was public health, EMS, and Niagara Regional Police Service. So we've had preliminary discussions. We just, with Chief Kevin Smith and with Dr. Feller from Public Health, we just don't know where that money sits at this point in time and what the dollar amount is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Correct, because this year's give, depending on, well, I don't think it's going to change for the region, but with the municipalities, the first year's give was dependent upon whether you opted in or opted out. So if you opted in, we were guaranteed a dollar value. Then it's recalculated based on the number of municipalities across the province that have opted in and opted out. So my understanding as of yesterday, 376 municipalities opted in. Of the 440 municipalities, approximately 440, that had to make that decision. Now, the region itself doesn't count in that because it doesn't make that decision. It's on the local level. So that's how they looked at it. They took their region out of it. However, those regional municipalities that looked after the policing we're given a set number. So again, that number will probably change as the 376 after the 22nd is confirmed with regards to who's in, who's out. Because some of those municipalities that weren't in that number are ones that didn't make a decision at all, and the rules under the province was that then they're automatically opted in. So that number may change. So then that dollar value will change between now and the end of 2019 and then 2020 going forward with regards to who's in, who's out. They'll have the numbers and the dollars there. Also tied to that will be how we can use the money. I know with our municipality on how we can use it, we can't just put it in our general revenues. It's got to be used for specific, in this case, policing, and that'll be set by the province. So, okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Member McKendry.
I just wanted to inquire, noting around the one district foot patrol suggestion, that historically it was a three-way partnership between the City of St. Catharines, the BIA, and the NRP. And I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity to revisit the potential for joint funding for that position, recognizing that the ask is coming from the city, from the BIA, the mutual benefits, and is there an opportunity for another joint piece in that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that there were other priorities for the BIA and there were other competing priorities for the City of St. Catharines with their budget pressures as well. So we can certainly approach both. I know that Inspector Sawicki had approached them late in the year of 2018. And that's what we were told, that there were competing pressures.
Through you, Chair, just recognizing that the competing pressures, as our pressure increases, theirs has also increased, so perhaps they can revisit and see if there's an opportunity for a joint opportunity.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, just to get a little more knowledge on what Member Steele was talking about as far as the marijuana money. If those monies, is there any understanding whether the policing targeted monies go directly to the police or do they go to the funder of the police, the regional municipality? Because I know that the court uploading money always went to the municipality to help offset the ask. So I'm saying even if we get $250,000, all it would give us the region the money to offset the $250,000 that we're asking for in the budget. Is that how it's, do you have any understanding of how that might work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that the money would flow through to the region, and then the region would ultimately be responsible for. And I think the three of us, Dr. Felder, myself, and Chief Kevin Smith, were in agreement that at the end of the day, if one agency was having significant pressures that the other one wasn't, that we would try to align the money to go where it should go. There certainly seemed to be a very much a spirit of cooperation among the partners there.
I have just one question, Chief. On the page number 3 of the report, there talks about the 4.8 million or 3.5% increase on the normal inflationary and contractual increases. I know from our arbitrated settlement we're around 2.2% from a base wage perspective. Can yourself or a member of your staff just explain for clarity for everybody what the additional components are embedded in that to bring us up to 3.5?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to have Ms. Laura Rulo, our finance manager, come forward to the mic and she can explain where that breakdown is.
Thank you.
Sorry, through to the chair. So hang on a second, I'm just going to. So the normal inflationary and contractual increases of 4.8 million, which is really 3.5% increase from 18 to 19. It really is our compensation area, and it's increased by about $4 million. 2.7 million of that is our contractual increase of 1.95%. There also is movement between the grid, the pay bands, and that works out to be about 0.4%. The remaining amount from the 2.7 to 4 million is about 1.3 million in benefit increases. So as our salaries increase, so do our benefits. It's just, for example, OMERS will increase just as a result of salary increases. We also have some premium increases. CPP increased considerably in 2019. The remaining 800,000 is just increases in our other non-compensation sections, administrative equipment, IT. It's mainly, the 800,000 increase is mainly inflation. We also have some increases in our IT software. Which is mainly the result of just some increases in our maintenance agreements within our IT and investigative services. And we also had, the 800,000 also includes a $200,000 increase in our capital levy transfer in order for us to meet our 2019 capital budget. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. And the one thing on that other slide where you had the 2%, you should update that to 2.2, because at the bottom it says 2.2. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? If not, if we're in position to approve that, the motion on the floor is that the board approves the proposed 2019 operating budget for the police service and the board, resulting in a total net expenditure before indirect allocations of 147, 420, 210 million as an increase of 6.5%, and further that the 2019 operating budget for the police service and board be submitted to regional council for their approval. Did we have a mover and seconder? Yes, we did. Moved by Member Bonham and seconded by Member Stewart. So if everyone's in favor of approving the budget today, show of hands, please. So that matter is carried. And I believe the presentation of the region is next Thursday, the 31st of January, correct? Okay, thank you. Item number 19 is the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services and the support of the community well-being planning. There's a memorandum attached. If I could have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor, please. Moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member McKendrick. I think part of the discussion here should be around, I think, first of all, these two webinars coming up, I think, will be well worth it. I guess I'll turn this to the chief to take us through this on this matter. My view is this something that is each municipality responsible for, or is this something that basically falls in the line of the region as a global perspective? And that's where I'm not specifically clear on that as to where that would best be sort of fitted in. So, Chief.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's fair to say that you have some confusion around whose responsibility it is, and I too would share in that concern. From reading the correspondence, I believe it falls to the region and the municipalities to make a determination as to who will be the lead on the plan. We, as the Niagara Regional Police Service, play a role in developing the community and community safety and well-being plan, and we certainly welcome the opportunity to participate in those discussions as one of the stakeholders. But there are multiple stakeholders that are there, and I believe at this point, for the board's consideration, correspondence should be forwarded to the region, and a determination can be made at that point in time through at the region level.
But obviously, we would have an extremely important role at the table as the police service in development of this plan.
Absolutely, and as you recall, we had a presentation several months back at one of the OACP Zone 4 meetings. There was representation from the ministry that was there. The police service is one of many stakeholders that are at the table to develop that plan. You know, you have school boards, you have various other social services that work together hand in hand with the police and the municipalities in developing that that plan.
Okay, thank you. Member Bonham and then Member Stewart.
Yes, Chair. I just happened to skim the memo here on 19, and with regard to your question, I think page 2, number 6, clearly delineates that regional municipalities other than County of Oxford, are responsible for generating the CWSB. And on the next page, page 3, number 7, are lower tier municipalities required? And the answer is no. So I think that would answer your question as I would understand the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, probably a bit more of a comment, because having been at the same meeting that the Chief referred to, plus other conferences and such over the development of this plan, and of course not knowing what might change with the change of Ontario government, the real direction seems to be quite similar to the situation tables, and that is saying that the public safety is not just about policing, it's about all of the other government-funded agencies that contribute to the safety and well-being in a community. And my understanding of the direction was that in our case, a regional municipality, in conjunction with all of those publicly funded agencies that contribute to the well-being of society, would set the priorities and would set, similar to our business plan, would set priorities for the well-being of the community, and that all the agencies would be playing their roles in that community. So it's a bit of a, as I saw it, a shift from sort of the Police Services Act was the act, and you guys are, as police, are responsible for public safety. The government was at the time was saying that no, there's a broader section of society here that's responsible for public safety, and they wish to start to have all of those roles and working together. Like a situation table was a piece of that whole puzzle. So that's been my experience so far, and I think we have, according to this, about 2 years for our municipality to develop that plan based on surveys, based on the needs of our community, and prioritizing where we're going to make improvements. So similar to the business plan process, but now it's encompassing all of the agencies. I'm not sure if that concurs with your view, or that's my view of what I heard in the presentations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would echo my belief as well. I just wasn't sure as to who took the lead, whether it was the region or the lower tier municipalities, or do they do it together? So that's the uncertainty that I don't know about.
Well, the motion we have before us is basically that the board chair and chief of police correspond, and it says of all local municipalities, and I concur with Member Bonham's look at this. And I know this was part of the Safer Ontario's Act discussions in the fall at various seminars. So I would say we basically amend the motion here to correspond to the Niagara region and provide copies of the ministry's documentation with respect to the responsibilities for community safety and well-being plan, and I would probably say comma being developed to that, and correspond with them. I think it's important that they understand there's some webinars coming up, which I think are important to sort of, it's going to be new for them as much as it is for us. I will still go through the webinars myself, even though I can see it's the service or the board as a participant, just as the region is and other stakeholders within the region. But for my own education on this matter, I definitely want to sit through those, because it's, I remember it came up last year and it was not clear in my mind as to how this would sort of fit in. So if we're agreeable to that slight amendment to that motion as written in there, then unless there's any other additional questions, show of hands to correspond with the region on the matter as outlined. Okay, thank you. Number 20. Is the meeting schedule, or revised meeting schedule for 2019. Again, it's strictly for information. What did we change? Oh, we approved it. Okay. Oh, I know what we added. Yes. Just for clarity on this, we're now indicating that we will be holding a meeting in Wainfleet and in the town of Pelham in 2019. We will be in Wainfleet on May 30th. And on October 24th, we'll be in the town of Pelham. So those are the changes that are in the thing. So a motion is for the approval of the revised meeting schedule for 2019. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member Gale. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Item number 21 is the licensing amended bylaw 382-219. Now this amends the annual fees and provide increases annually for the same percentage as the Consumer Price Index. And the motion before us is the board adopts bylaw number 382-2019, authorize the board chair and executive director to execute the required documentation. If I could have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member Stewart. Any discussions on that item? Any comments? The executive director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make the board members aware that on Schedule 2, there have been 2 new charges added in addition to the 2% CPI increase. That's for the replacement of the vehicle for hire identification card at $10 and the replacement for the vehicle for hire license plate at $20. They were initially part of our 2016 bylaw, and during the revision process for 2018, they were inadvertently left off the schedule, so we've added them back on, and I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Show of hands in favor. That matter is dealt with. New business. Any new business from any board members? Okay, so then this part of the meeting is adjourned. We'll break for about 15 minutes and then we'll go into the confidential session. Thank you.